All right, welcome back to another reaction video. I'm going to do another reaction video of a Rush song. This one is the Live in Frankfurt concert because I want to look at the Neil Peart drumming. Now, I'm going to say a couple things about that other video first if you want to, and this will be somewhat long, this opening sequence. So you could skip this, go to just the reaction, enjoy that. And I totally understand it. I do that all the time when I go to reactions, but I hope you'll stick around for a second for a specific reason. One is I'm interested in this question that was brought up in that other video that I brought up, which is true greatness. And what is greatness? I think there should be standards of greatness, but we do need to, figure out how to define that. I haven't done that. And I'd like to talk to you guys about what that is. What is greatness? Because to me, I think we should hold up as greatness and say, this is greatness and here's why. Not just because a lot of people like it. There's a lot of musicians that a lot of people like and can fill arenas, and they're not necessarily great or at the greatest or even close to that. So I think we need to have standards that are not merely popularity. I think people who are evil have had popularity. That's not standard for greatness. I don't just mean musicians. I mean like politicians and demagogues and things like that. So I don't think that's a standard. Technical prowess, I think, is closer to a standard, but I think there's still more. So I can, so we're going to look at this video later, and I want to talk about, the premise of that show I did or that reaction video I did for my first time hearing Rush is that, is looking at this or asking this question of, is it required to have great suffering that leads to true greatness? And again, by true greatness, I don't mean necessarily just popularity. I mean somebody who defines the standards of their field. That's one way to think about it, is that they not only defines, they elevate the field or they create a whole new field, right? That's great. They achieve something that's unusual, abnormal, way above the average. That's what it means to me to be great, epic. Like they are the standard by which all others, define themselves. Now, a lot of people argued that this is Neil Peart is your favorite drummer's favorite drummer. And that's a pretty good reason to believe that he's truly great. So, I want to, explore what that means in regards to Rush. So I might have been a little flippant in that other video, but I just want to, in the Rush video, the Tom Sawyer, my first time reacting, it was, that video, I got I got 100 something comments, a couple thousand views. And, I want to make sure that I give true credence to, this person and see how great he was. I understand that he did pass away. So that, that's the number one thing I want to, explore. I also want to explore the way that we interact with each other on the internet. So that Rush reaction video was my true first time truly reacting and experiencing Rush. I had probably heard, I say it was like first time reacting because that's what you're supposed to do with reaction video. I have a lot of friends who love Rush. I am sure in the background they played some song or whatever, but I didn't really focus on it. And I said this in the other video as well, but music is not my forte at all. I obviously listen to music like everybody else. I like, classical music. I like golden oldies, I'm an old school, but I've never really gotten into music. Now, I could teach you a lot about literature. I've studied and taught literature from ancient Greek to, more modern literature, poetry from Sappho on down to, modern stuff today, plays from the ancient Greeks to Browning and even some modern stuff. So I know a lot about that art. I know a good amount about the visual arts, painting and sculpture in particular. So there's arts that I am very knowledgeable about. I got a film degree. So there are definite, arts that I could probably teach you something about. Music is not one of them. And that's my reason for doing this. I don't, I do some videos on poetry. I do some podcasts on poetry, but this is me experiencing this. And so, I understand as an audience, you go in with you want to watch this video to re-experience, see the value and the love that you have of this band. And I get that. In fact, I did a whole video where I talked about reaction videos and why we love them, why they're so popular. And I actually read and just analyzed a famous 1798 poem by William Wordsworth to kind of just describe that. So I wanted to point out a couple things about what we, you and I together doing reaction videos, you, the audience, me learning this, is we could really work together. And I thought there was a lot of really good comments, very kind, and I think did it the right way. And I'm going to show a couple and read them. Again, feel free to skip to the thing. That's fine. I understand. But, and I'm not going to showcase what I thought were really unproductive comments and unnecessary comments. I got a lot of unnecessary comments, but I'll just say of the unnecessary comments that were not, helpful, or like, what was the point of saying this, is I think your reaction to me and my experience of this, you should ask yourself what kind of a person you are. And I mean that, like, what kind of a person are you? Like, are you there just to be a bad person and to really try to, like insult somebody who, is trying to discover maybe I messed up and I didn't do it correctly? Or are you really trying to, put something forth that's positive into the world and help me improve in a positive way? And I think on the internet, we need to be better at this in general. So a lot of the comments I got that were negative were just like, well, yeah, you are ignorant, or I can't believe you said, this is so stupid, or blah, blah, blah. And I just thought like, okay, that's fine. I don't mind getting those personally. I think it's funny, but it's not helpful. And I think there are some good ones that I really enjoyed. So, like here's a good one. So, and there's a lot of these, so I appreciate these a lot. So Richard Cage said, check out his drum solo from R30 tour in Frankfurt. And that's what I'm going to do I think that's what this one is, the live in Frankfurt. And I got a couple people mentioning this solo. So that's what I'm going to be watching today. And he says, this comment, Richard Cage says, he was not a drummer, but a percussionist, widely regarded as the best drummer in rock and roll. As Dave Grohl said about Pert, he is your favorite drummer's favorite drummer. So he's basically, his comment is to give me reasons why I'm wrong, but in a positive way. So I appreciate the feedback. Here's another one like Jesse Hayes. This studio version of Tom Sawyer is not intended to showcase Pert's greatness, but check out some live Rush to understand the drumming ability. Beautiful. That's a great example. So I have one here. Watch and listen to his drum solo and you'll see just how good Neil was. That's it. That's a great comment. I appreciate that one. Other great quote, rock drummers cite Neil as their main inspiration. Nice. This is actually from a friend of mine. Kirk, rather than rehash what others have said, I'll refer you to Rock Beddoes' video on Rush in his What Makes This Song Great. I'm going to watch that later and do a reaction to that. Maybe it will give you a greater appreciation for Rush in general, Neil Peart in particular. The truth is they are all fantastic musicians. You happen to choose one of their most commercially successful songs. You might listen to some of the other songs mentioned by others to get more of a sense of his virtuosity. Here's one by someone who was actually there at the event where we were kind of hanging, or at some friend's house where we were kind of hanging out. My friend Trevor says, I think it's a mistake to equate great musicianship with an ability to freak out on one's instrument. And what he's referring to there is the movie Whiplash, where I like how he said freak out, where it was this moment, if you've seen the movie, where he's trying to achieve greatness. But again, he has the standards of like someone who's really gone to highest heights and above in there. And I won't mention the whole thing, but you mentioned jazz. So an example would be freeform soloing of John Coltrane and Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker is mentioned in the movie Whiplash, both of whom made a lot of excellent music, but who definitely went into excessive freak-out mode in an attempt to break out of the form of music itself. I think the greatness demonstrated by Peart in this song, that's the Tom Sawyer song, is that he plays exactly the right thing at every moment of the song. So that's an interesting perspective. I mean, that's the difference between the form and what jazz does. And here's my favorite one that I thought, this is the mentality we should all have on the internet with each other in general. The average drummer couldn't keep the beat consistently your novice ears didn't hear it. And I think it's a criticism, and it's a good one. And he's right. And I said that on the show, and I admit. But it's good. We get to teach you more Rush. But that's the way to do it. Your novice ears couldn't hear it. And in fact, this is true. I bet a lot of you don't try out poetry because you're afraid of it, or you think it's bad or whatever. And I mean, classic poetry, pre-1920s. And, I think if you let me get an opportunity to help you see it, you might learn something and enjoy it as well. Okay, so I'm going to watch this, reaction. I'm going to react to this. This is going to be my first reaction. I'm going to try to have a little bit more of an open mind. And oh yeah, for the record, the Tom Sawyer song, I enjoyed it. I said that in the video, and nobody ever mentions that. Like I did say, I like this. This is good, but greatest of all time? I don't know. I mean, if we're going to have some serious conversation about what it means to be great in music, and, how do we compare, for instance, a drummer today to a symphony in the 1800s, because I think there's some stuff that, I don't know that we've progressed in our music abilities from them. There seems to be something greater about the past, and I don't know what happened exactly, but again, within the context of drumming, just as the technique of drumming, I think we can definitely get to maybe Neil Peart is great and the greatest. That's great. That's great. All right, so let's, here we go. So I might have to pause a couple times, but I'll try not to pause too much. I know that's annoying for you all, but I'll do my best. But there's copyright issues. All right, here we go. Live in concert. I hope this is the right one. I did say this last time, that setup is crazy. I mean, I've seen it kind of. Why does he have those on? Is that for himself or for the audience? I mean, this is definitely more than the other one already, I think. I would like a freak out moment, come on. No, this is, guys. I have a feeling an amateur would have a difficult time with this. I admit it. That feels almost exactly like the Whiplash scene at the beginning. Like the speed he's going. That? It's thunder. Oh shit! There he goes. He don't stop. Pretty good. Oh, damn. Does he do anything other than practice? This is so complex. There he goes. Oh shit. Damn. A little different than the Tom Sawyer one. There we go. Woo! All right, there we go. Cancel that. Oops. Sorry, it's still going. All right. All right. So, no, speechless. That was really good. I really enjoyed that. As I enjoyed the Tom Sawyer one, I enjoyed this a lot. And I was looking at it from what, a lot of you mentioned in the comments. And one of the things that came to my mind was something that someone said about he's not a drummer, he's a percussionist. And that definitely stuck out to me. Like he's using all kinds of percussion instruments. He's not just a drum, traditional or normal drum set. So I thought that was fascinating. That's a good example. He's a percussionist. And, I don't know if I've really seen, that kind of a whole setup just for the drummer, the percussionist, and just doing a whole thing on that. It brings to mind something about, if we're thinking about this greatness thing. So from a technical standpoint, I could see how people would argue that this is great. I don't have the know-how to be able to evaluate that. And so it's an interesting perspective. I could see when I originally posed this question and someone brought up Neil Peart, the reason they brought up Neil Peart was because, my premise was selecting someone that's great that didn't necessarily suffer. And I know people mentioned he suffered later in life, but his suffering did not lead to his greatness. And that's my premise, is that there's suffering and then greatness. I think about many great novelists and artists, and they seem to have gone through some kind of suffering. And, maybe that's not the correct way to think about it. Maybe they have to go through some kind of intense trial, either self-chosen or sometimes it's imposed on you. Like greatness is, what's that Shakespeare quote? Some people have greatness, it's something like some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them, or something like that. I think that's the way it goes. It's something like that. Like you're born great, you achieve it. I think that makes a lot of sense about human natures in terms of greatness, is that it's not necessarily the suffering that leads to the greatness. I don't think suffering leads to greatness necessarily. I still hold that there seems to be a connection in terms of looking at many great lives. It seems like they did go through a good amount of suffering, especially if we, understand it as true epic greatness. But when I made that proposition, the standard, or what someone mentioned, was Neil Peart, who was like a middle-class Canadian or something like that, and just came from a generic middle-class neighborhood. And now I don't know if, enough about his background, if that's true, if he had some kind of great suffering. Was he terribly, like maybe loneliness is suffering and he just chose to put his time into, into drumming and becoming a great percussionist? I don't know. Just a question. And then there's the secondary question of, so he achieved technical skill of a high level through intense amount of practice, obviously. And so he's great at that level. But then, is this the epic defining of greatness as such? Like, then is there a stopgap where, in some particular instrument, it's not the greatness? I don't know. I'm not saying yes to that. I'm just asking questions. So just answer the questions. What do you think about greatness and achieving it? So there's nothing wrong at all. In fact, I haven't achieved anything near something like that in terms of technical greatness, even an iota of that. And I have deep respect for anybody who achieves anything. And so he has obviously achieved immense amount of technical skill, and it was enjoyable. So I want to listen to more Rush songs because I really enjoy melodies and harmonies, and I tend to look, at beat as more primitive and not as, leading to the great, intense, deep emotions that are possible to humans, as with that you get with classical, harmonies and melodies and symphonies, putting it all together with percussion and so on. So it's interesting to see percussion at its greatest, though. Maybe that's percussion at its greatest. What do you think? Again, don't jump on me. Just tell me what you think. And that's possible. And, that was just an interesting, showcase of his talents. Now I need to watch some more stuff where it's, I need to look at Rush. I think someone said Xanadu and some other ones. I'll watch some of those videos and kind of look into Rush and tell me what you think greatness means. Like, is there something in any particular music that transcends your nostalgic enjoyment of it? Music has the ability in art or in with humans in general to reach directly into your emotions. Every other art form is very different from that. Completely opposite. So with a visual art, you have to look at the visual art. You have to analyze and think about what's happening in the scene. You have to think about what happened before, what actions were they doing, what emotions are they conveying, and the figures on there. I'm talking about objective art that actually has objects, not modern art, which I barely even consider art. And so you have to think about like that. And then once you understand what's happening with the scene, then from that understanding will often come the emotion. This is true of, like a short story. I love short stories, or a poem where you have to read and reread and reread the poem. And you have to kind of think about each word and line. But then once it starts coming together, it's like one of those images when I can't remember what they're called, but like I used to see them in malls back when I was a kid in the 90s. You'd like look at it, it was just all fuzzy. But then if you like unfocus your eyes and focus them, you would see a picture. And that's kind of like what reading literature and poetry is like, is it's not, especially poetry, it's not necessarily readily available, but once it becomes available, it can be very impactful, changing, and provocative and interesting and beautiful and emotionally engaging in a way that I think is not obvious. So anyway, I think there's some interesting questions here to pursue. I'm excited to learn more about Rush and music in general. I've done a lot of reaction videos to rap, and my conclusion was that there was one, it's not poetry, was one conclusion I had, and because everyone said that about it. And two, it's has some fun beats, some interesting lyrics occasionally, and there's definitely some merit to it occasionally, although there's a lot of things where there's not that much merit to it. And again, I'm trying to get at it from like, what value in the enhancement of human life does it have? So anyway, this is great. And tell me what you think. What should I try next? I'm right now interested in learning more about Rush in particular and what makes Rush great, what makes Neil Peart great, and this question of is suffering required for greatness? And after I suffered through all the negative comments, I'm becoming a greater YouTube person. Probably not, but thank you for watching, and comment below.